welcome back to the Villa podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, how are you doing tonight, mate?
Good to be back, mate. I've realised just as I've seen myself that I probably could have picked some better attire. I didn't mean to be wearing this deeper blue on a day like today. No allegiance switch, I promise. And also, um, quite an exciting week. I've noticed in previous podcasts and stuff that my internet's been cutting out a bit recently, and Dan is in far higher resolution than I am. But I'm getting some better internet coming in soon, and B, I'm hoping to get a lead which will connect my camera so that you can see my glorious face in the same light that you see Dan's glorious face. So this is hugely exciting times for the pod. I apologise for the attire, but hopefully being able to see me in some better quality in just a couple of weeks should make up for it.
On the subject of attire, Dan, I mean, I hate to make this about me, but I mean, I'm wearing Gymshark. Did you watch the True Geordie podcast with Ben, the guy, the founder of Gymshark?
I saw it. He's been everywhere, but I haven't seen it. No.
Well, first of all, I'd recommend watching it because, I mean, what an interview. Second of all, we need Ben on the pod. He's a Villa fan. He's from Bromsgrove. If Ollie Mason, if you've got the hookup, mate, from Bromsgrove, we need to get on that because I think everyone knows everyone in Bromsgrove. But yeah, no, Ben's a Villa fan. It'd be great if we could somehow reach out and get him on the pod.
Absolutely.
It'd be an interesting pod.
Make it happen.
So if you guys are listening, know about Ben from Gymshark and know about Gymshark, just at him, tell him that the Villa boys, they want to chat. They just want to.
We need it
on Zoom. You know, this isn't as high quality as True Geordie podcast, unfortunately. In terms of production value, but in terms of content, it is. And
we're trying. We're trying.
I mean, we can dream, Dan. We can dream. But no, if anyone who's listening as well hasn't listened to that, I would really recommend checking that one out on YouTube, Spotify, whatever. Big fan of True Geordie stuff, and his podcasts are incredible. And it was this one with Gymshark Ben was definitely not an exception to that. But obviously, you guys aren't here to hear us talk about dream podcast guests. You're here for a Wolverhampton Wanderers preview that we promised you last week. It's been a while. We have got a podcast in the can. I've just not had the time to get it out. It's a quiz. So Danny, Cole, if you're listening, I'm really sorry. It's nothing personal. Uni has just taken over, and that's a big edit because we had such a good time. So we're back. We're with a preview Wolves because we didn't do it last week. Obviously, as you guys all know, our game against Newcastle United has been suspended. And just on that subject, Dan, Newcastle are fearing that their next game is going to be postponed as well now, aren't they? Because of this COVID outbreak, which is, first of all, I've just got to question how this has happened because, like, Newcastle are one of the only clubs where you're seeing, like in England at least, these mass outbreaks. Like, is it players or coaching staff aren't following the rules? Like, I don't understand it because we've not seen this many cases like at this kind of scale with any other sort of elite football club.
Well, no, but this is the interesting thing, mate, is that, you're starting to see the Premier League slightly has different measures to other countries. If you take La Liga, for example, I don't know if it's sort of gone a bit under the radar really, but it's quite a drastic approach. They're not using dressing rooms at all this season. So not at the changing ground, not at games. Players rock up in full kit. Is a really bizarre situation where players get off the team bus, they're in full kit, have their team talks, they warm up, and they just go straight out on the pitch. And so the Premier League has taken a slightly more, it's weird, isn't it? Have taken a slightly more reserved approach to it. But the testing has been largely positive. I mean, on the whole, you're getting about, the Premier League on average, because they test everybody at a club that goes into the ground. So they're conducting about 500, 600 tests a week, and there's usually about 6 to 8 across those 500 or 600 in a match. And so that's across all the staff at all clubs. Whereas Newcastle at the moment have about 10 or 12 cases just within their first team. So it's really interesting, and considering Jack Grealish and Ross Barkley's evident flouting of the coronavirus regulations in the week, which I'm not even going to get into. It is surprising, but it's an interesting one. But this is the nature of the beast, mate. This can happen to anyone at a given time, and as soon as you get one case within the club, we know how quickly this virus can spread, and so it has proved for Newcastle. Unfortunately, we just hope that they get it sorted out as quickly as they can.
Yeah, I mean, Neil Warnock would have hated being in La Liga then, wouldn't he? You see his rant the other day about the dressing rooms at Stoke, having
Oh, not
petrol
that
fumes
water on the
coming
floor,
in and
mate.
being
Not
in.
the water on the
Literally,
floor.
it's
Terrible, terrible. No
to
state
be
for a
honest,
human
Neil
being.
Warnock is someone who I have just generally not liked that much whenever you come up against one of his teams. You know what they're going to do, but I find him weirdly endearing. Like he seems like a proper nice bloke, but you don't want to be on the receiving end of the full
No.
Warnock wrath, do you?
Well,
I
we've
mean,
all
he's
seen those
in,
videos from his time at Sheffield United, mate. Probably a good.
mate, that's
I tell you
brilliant.
what,
Where they've got him
if he
mic'd
was,
up.
yes, if he was in La
Yeah.
Liga, at least his team couldn't get those pelters in the dressing room. He'd have to go like full Phil Brown and do it out on the pitch, get them all around in a circle.
Oh, mate, that would be some top quality billing. That's really.
Yeah.
Did you see the side by side of the Warnock stuff from
Oh,
Sheffield United from that doc and the Pep, and they're essentially just saying the same thing. I mean, it's brilliant. Honestly,
There's
it's
that
it's so
beautiful
good.
video of Neil Warnock, and he's in the dressing room, and he's like, "It's all right, lads. It's okay if you don't score." And he sort of turns around, he turns back, and goes, "Well, you will fucking score." It's unbelievable how much management has changed. But here he is; he's still out doing bits at Borough. Yeah, it's an interesting one, and yeah, as I said, but football and dinosaurs in themselves, we still find Steve Bruce up at Newcastle, so that grade of manager is still capable of doing something. Slightly different opposition to what we've got coming up this weekend, though, who don't exactly quite play anti-football, do
they? Not to that extent, but that's a fairly nice segue onto the Wolves preview, Dan, because Wolves are. They're a counter-attacking team. They're set up with 3-4-3 generally, and the aim is to soak up the pressure, hit teams on the break. It's a really good strategy against the top sides, and I think that's why you've seen so many good results for Wolves against the Big Six. And I hate to use that. People who are listening, I used air quotes there. Their past 5 games, it's been fairly hit and miss for Wolves, and obviously in the 2-1 win against Arsenal, the horrific injury that Raul Jimenez suffered. Fractured skull, which is just awful, and you've got to question whether he's even going to play the game again. Thankfully, he's been discharged from hospital. He's at home with his family. So from Villa, we wish Jimenez and his family, all the best. But looking at their past 5 games, they've beat a 10-man Palace side. They've lost to Leicester. They've drew against Southampton, which, to be fair, isn't a terrible result. They've beat Arsenal, and then as recently as Sunday, they've been tonked 4-0 by Liverpool in a game which it really felt like Liverpool Klopp's side of last season was back, really. Kind of turned it on in the second half again. But this isn't one where we can, we're looking at the form. It's been fairly mismatched there. Form goes out of the window in these kind of games. It's not like a derby. It's not like Villa Blues. It's not like Villa Baggies. But there is this rivalry there, and we've not formed very well against Wolves in the past, God, you could say about 10 meetings, Dan, to be fair, of what it feels like. I mean, the last good result was the 4-1 win at home with our man Berkut Bjarnason scoring that goal. Beautiful celebration. But listen, it's going to be a really tough game. Obviously, they're going to be without Raul Jimenez. How are you expecting this game to go, Dan? Because obviously we're away from home, I believe. And I think similarly to Wolves, actually, the way Villa have got their better results when the pressure hasn't been on them, and they've been able to sit back, soak it up, and counter-attack teams, which is really interesting because I feel like this isn't the pure Smith ball that we saw in the Championship, but it's clearly effective. I think when we've tried to dominate games in terms of possession, shots, whatever, trying to work them percentages, Villa haven't actually, we've not won a game this season where we've had the better of our opponents in that regard. You've just got to look at the Arsenal game, performances like that. Villa prefer to be the underdog in the scenario. Do you think coming into this that we are the underdog in this game, Dan? Because as I say, Wolves form fairly questionable. They're 10th, we're 12th. You could argue that we're both kind of going on a bit of a level playing field, I think.
Yeah, there's not, the gulf between the two sides is as slim as I think it's been for, as long, it's in those 10 meetings, to be honest with you, mate. Well, we've come off the form, even in the Champion, Wolves were a more complete side. I think, when obviously they got promoted and we were still under sort of Bruce when we had that 4-1 win and stuff like that. And, there was a sense that they were more the finished article. They've come up. I mean, let's not forget that they are still playing in Europe this season, and they've done quite well, actually, on the continent. Their Premier League form has been a bit patchy, but perhaps because of how well they've been performing on the continent, that it's not the most difficult group, but, they've still been putting amongst, Braga and Besiktas, and have still come out with 13 points from those 6 games. They've only lost once, which is, funny enough, only enough to put them second. Braga have stormed that group, but, I don't think you're going to find a Wolves fan out there that's going to complain about being in the Europa League knockouts, given where they were not too long ago. But this season has been an interesting one for Wolves. I actually don't think they're as good as they were last season. I think that's largely because of the players that they've lost and the players that they've decided to bring in. Obviously, we've gone to see, he was good at Wolves, but his performances for Liverpool have shown us just how good Diogo Jota is. He's a fine player, and it's there's no better way to state how well he's been performing other than in the summer that front three of Firmino, Mane, and Salah looked untouchable. You couldn't think of maybe bar your top 3 or 4 players in the world, a player that could break that front three. But Jota has come in and is causing some real headaches. What a player! And Wolves, decided to spend a lot of that money on Fabio Silva, who I'm assuming it's one that he's 18, 35 million pounds for a striker. You're expecting a pretty immediate return, regardless of age. That's a lot of money, and he's not quite the finished article yet. He looks a little bit sort of rabbit in the headlights when he's played. He played against Arsenal and has played in other games this season. And, that's no slight against him. He's a wonderful, wonderful player. He's the youngest player to ever play for Porto. He's a fantastic talent and he will come good in the future. But right now, Wolves weren't quite anticipating that Jimenez would suffer this injury. And so he's sort of been thrust into this position, and whereby Wolves, as a result, have sort of shifted formations. That 3-4-3 that you talked about, Dan, they've tried on with 3 games. They've scored 3, conceded 5 in those games. It wasn't really working. And then now with Jimenez out, you've got a real problem of who do you play at the focal point of that attack. They've tried Podence there. They've tried Silva there. Even Pedro Neto's had to go inside. But Wolves, last season, you knew exactly how they were going to line up. This year, it's not as clear. And so it's hard to predict which Wolves you're going to get whenever you play them this season.
It is. And again, Jimenez, they like looked like such a one-man band this season. Like, as good as Wolves were last season, it's fair to say that they're not quite living up to it, whether that is, as you say, fighting on all fronts in terms of being in Europe for Europa League or whatever. They will be wishing to kind of climb back up the table, especially when you see Southampton are sat in 5th, Tottenham are top. And I think we both said in our Premier League predictions podcast, Dan, that Tottenham would do very well this season. This is the year Jose wins the Premier League, and I've thought that for a while now. I don't think I've vocalised that in the podcast enough, but I mean, we're not talking about Tottenham here. I'm getting carried away just looking at the table. They're doing bits though. But no, Wolves, they've got West Ham above them. They've got Manchester United above them. They've got Everton above them. They're going to want to be above them kind of sides, Dan, aren't they? They really are. And a player who I am wary of is Daniel Podence, Dan, because since joining in January, and again, he's one that we highlighted in our Premier League predictions podcast, Signings of the Summer. He's kind of, he's the Diogo Jota replacement that, in terms that, he's Portuguese, signed in the same position, scored a few goals this season as well. Probably a bit more direct than Jota, I would say. But listen, there's no Jota slander here. He is taken like a duck to water to that Liverpool side, which has been absolutely amazing. It's going to be really tough. I'm thinking about the last game we played at Molineux, how we just seemingly thrown it away. There was the injury to Nyland that day, was it not? Or no, it was Steele, wasn't it?
Two keepers, yeah. Because we brought Nyland on and he got injured, and then Jed went in goal, as I remember correctly.
And Matt Targett was injured in that game, and it wasn't Douglas Luiz's finest hour either. I don't think I've not been that annoyed at a performance in a long time. But listen, it's going to be really tough, Dan. I don't feel good about this at all. It's one of them ones where I think both sides coming into it are probably a bit wary, which is never a good thing.
No.
But just looking at some of Wolves' main players, Dan, in terms of XG, which is a stat we know you love, Fabio Silva, funnily enough, has an XG of 0.22 per 90 minutes, which is interesting. Obviously, he's not really played that much, but just having a glance here, he's ranked third there, with the highest XG actually going to Podence, who I've just alluded to there, 0.27 XG per 90. Jimenez second there, 0.26. Obviously, he's out though. Podence is going to be a really difficult one to manage, Dan, because he's similarly to Jota. He's quite adaptable. He can play around that front line. Obviously, we're going to assume that Fabio Silva is going to lead the line. So listen, it's going to be a tough afternoon for Cash as well, who I thought against West Ham, Dan, did not have a very good game.
Well, there's a lot of threats, and I think that's what if you're desperately trying to search for positives out of what happened to Raul Jimenez, of which there aren't many. It was a terrible injury, as you said. It's really allowed some of those fringe players in the Wolves squad to sort of come to the fore. I mean, I'm going to take that Liverpool game in isolation. Trips to Anfield can do crazy things to teams, and that 4-0 wasn't great, but Connor Cody, who has been so reliable, just was absolutely a wash in that game. So putting that aside, that result against Arsenal, Pedro Neto and Daniel Podence ran the show. They were really, really impressive. Adama Traore has shown an ability to operate in the middle third and turn provider in central areas that he hasn't had in previous seasons. And so he's up leveling his game in that regard. And so it would be interesting to see how Wolves formulate that front three. But for Villa, it's all about how we formulate our midfield three, because we're still without Ross Barkley. I think there were some sort of lingering hopes that whilst we didn't play the Newcastle game, he would return to be fit this week. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Dean Smith looks to change that, because Connor, as I said in the last podcast, didn't particularly play awfully, despite what some fans may think, but he certainly wasn't at his best. Do you then put someone like Nakamba at the base and move Douglas higher, or do you is it too soon for Jacob Ramsey? There's so many questions, and that's a real question mark in this Villa squad. The rest will be pretty much nailed on, as you imagine. But yeah, we've also seen Dean in that game, the Brighton one, where Ross Barkley did get injured. Bertrand Traore came back in, so we know Dean's got that option. There's loads of different ways he can work that midfield, and so with a game to Molyneux, and Wolves haven't been great this season, but on home form, they're still doing okay. If you took just home games in the Premier League, it would put together a table where Wolves sit 7th, which is about where they want to finish at the end of the season. It's really interesting. And so that midfield is a big question mark for me, mate.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I don't envy Dean for having to make that. Obviously, as well, our away form has been really good, apart from obviously the loss against West Ham. That being our only loss on the road in the league this season. So hopefully we can try and pick up from where we started with this season with a win on the road. Dan, I'm going to do what I do always in the previews and ask you for a score prediction. I couldn't predict this one, so
it's tough, isn't it?
I don't know how you're going to do, Dan. It is really tough. It is, and it's going to be. I think we're kind of seeing. We'll see what this team is made of. I think, obviously, without Ross Barkley, it's disastrous. But as you alluded to, there could be Connor, could be Bertrand. We've got players who are fighting for their spaces. We're coming to, we've got 3 weeks till the transfer window opens, Dan, which is crazy that we're even saying this. Players are going to be fighting for their spots in this team. Yeah,
it's a difficult one to call, mate. And I think Wolves will stick with that. They played a 4-3-3 against Liverpool, and whether they stick with that, whether that was just a special formation that they've used to match Liverpool man for man is interesting. So it'd be interesting to see how Wolves line up, but I think they'll revert back to a 3-4-3. And if that's the case, Villa needs to get a grip on that midfield. My head says 2-2. I can't see us winning the game, but Villa have won some crazy games this season. So on the same side, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me too much if we did. But based on our recent form, my head says a 2-2, maybe a 2-1 draw. If I'm being an optimist, 2-2, but I wouldn't be surprised if Wolves got the better of us in this one.
Hopefully, and obviously with the early kickoff this weekend, Dan, we will have as always, a reaction podcast out probably later in the evening on Saturday due to other commitments. But Dan, before we ended, I just wanted to talk with you about some news that we both briefly spoke about before we came on air. Some brilliant news from the account, the Birmingham Development blog. Has tweeted confirming that there is in production, I guess if that's the correct word, Villa are looking to construct an inner city training academy, which funnily enough comes on the same day that we hear that Birmingham City are in fact closing their academy down and reverting to a system similar to Brentford, operating a B and C team. This is really interesting, especially with the implications of Brexit and what that means for academies signing foreign players, who are under the age of 18, 19. Obviously, that is now going to be a thing of the past. So well done, everyone who voted for that. But it will put this kind of impotence on developing youth players. The Brentford system is quite interesting, but Birmingham, by all means, do not have a bad academy. It's rare you're going to get a shout out on a Villa podcast about Blues doing bits, but you've just got to look at the likes of Nathan Redmond, Damari Gray, Jude Bellingham. Every kind of 5 years, there's a player coming out of there, and that's more than we can say in recent years. Dan, we've had Jack Grealish, and that's really where it ends. Obviously, we're looking to improve that. This inner city training academy that we look to be developing. It can only be a good thing, and as well with Blues kind of shutting theirs down as well, it's one less team to worry about. The kind of catchment area for players that Villa can gets that bit wider. We can cast our net like that, and it looks like, according to this tweet, that they are there's going to be an indoor 3G pitch, outdoor pitch, change of facilities, office spaces for obviously for the coaches and for people who work at the club. Parents lounge, and I think there's another few indoor pitches. This is all a stone's throw away from Villa Park, which is absolutely amazing, because you've just got to look at the the CFA that Manchester City have with the proximity to the Etihad Stadium. It's really good. I just think it's like a mentality thing for the players. They're going to be there every day. They go past the stadium. That's the end goal. The facilities we have out in Bodymore are world class as known, but it's still about 20-25 minutes out from Villa Park. So I think this is really good news, Dan, to be honest.
Yeah, mate. Well, it reflects what has been fantastic development on the club from an academy perspective for a couple of years now. We're really starting to see this put into action. The acquisition of Mark Harrison from West Brom, who's again, their academy was probably starting to eclipse ours. The players that he's bringing in the likes of Louis Barry, and the sheer amount of money that has been spent on Bodymore Heath, to give these players a permanent home, which I think is really important, because I didn't think it was doing the players too much good to be playing some game at the Bankses, some games at Villa Park, some games behind closed doors at Bodymore. They've now got a permanent home, which I'm really excited for Villa fans to be able to get down to properly, because we had a couple of weeks of it down at Bodymore. So hopefully when things are back to normal, we can experience that. And Dan, I think that would be something, if you and I could get down to one time, that would be brilliant. The academy is making great strides, mate, and we should really start to reap the benefits of this in 3 or 4 years' time. But it's really only Jack Grealish that we've seen come through and actually cement himself in the first team in our lifetimes, mate. We're starting to see the likes of Jacob Ramsey, who I mentioned earlier, come through. But hopefully this is something that's going to work in tandem with Bodymore. So we're going to have all the stuff going on there, as well as this stuff in the city. And the more that we grow that presence, the more that we try to establish ourselves as the biggest player, the kingpin of academy football in Birmingham, the better, because there's so much talent to be had in such a vast area. Birmingham is a city that loves football, but tends to lack major talents coming through. Blues have had their few. We've had Jack Grealish, but you consider the size of Birmingham, there must be so many other talented kids out there. I mean, how I or you were never picked up, mate, and done in the Villa at this point is beyond me. I mean, if it wasn't for that knee injury, I'm fairly sure Emmy would have his gloves threatened. But no, all good news, mate. All good news.
Absolutely, and it's just really good. It's good to see that there's still positive developments, because this isn't the kind of thing that you always hear about necessarily. So seeing that, that tweet is Only a few hours old, but it's still doing relatively decent numbers. So the more people that can see it, the better. We'll probably clip this up so as you guys can, so as we can kind of get that out for you guys as well, with our audience. But yeah, Dan, as always, it has been a pleasure talking to you. It has been a bit longer than last time, but we're back, guys. We will be back, as I say, probably around Saturday evening, for our post-match reaction. So make sure you check that out. And before we go, Dan and I, we just wanted to hear some thoughts from you guys because we've got some ideas for different content. Obviously, as you may know, if you follow Dan and I on Twitter, it's not just Villa. We like talking about all kinds of stuff, Dan, don't we? All kinds of crap, all kinds of sport, all kinds of football. Literally, I mean, that's a way to put it. If you guys, well, basically, what we want to know: are you guys potentially interested in a general football podcast that would encompass not only the Premier League, of course, Villa would always be a part of that wherever we find it suitable, but some European, American, whatever. Just a podcast about general football with the biggest games of that week, whatever. We'd like to know if you'd like to hear about that because obviously Dan and I, we love talking about Villa. It's something that I think we'll always do. I don't think we'll ever not do this, Dan. But just as something else, just to kind of another bow to add, to I forgot how that saying goes. So I fucked it there. But just another thing for you guys, another bit of content for you to enjoy. And secondly, we are looking at the end of December, around New Year time, to start live streaming Football Manager with an Aston Villa save on this YouTube channel. We're gonna a dual save. It's gonna be really fun because I've probably only touched Football Manager twice in my life. Dan lives on it. I've been more of a FIFA guy. Dan's the FM guy, so we think it would be really funny. There'd be certain rules whereby we can't sign players in some of the transfer window. We're going to kind of work with what Villa have, and then go from there, and then just kind of take it week by week and see where we finish up, and if we are qualified to take the Villa's job down when Dean feels like he's had enough. So if you guys want to see a general football podcast and this Football Manager Aston Villa save that Dan and I are going to live stream, let us know in the comments below. Hit the like button as well if you enjoyed this. Comment your thoughts below, how you think this Wolves game is going, and obviously about the podcast and Football Manager. And subscribe for more because we're probably going to look at doing a giveaway at some point. And it always helps if you guys subscribe for that. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.